Hare Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Vishnu Vada Paramahansa Parivrajika Stotara Sadashi Srimad Sabhangari Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Jago Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kundi Ki Jai Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Shri Shri Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shri Shri Ganga Maya Ki Jai. Shri Shri Jamuna Maya Ki Jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol Shamaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Narayanam Namaskritam Naram Chaivam Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Anga, bodies. Rakshan, while protecting. Gopahai, of the cowherds. Asadbihi, by the infidels. Abala Eva, like a weak woman. Vinirjitaha Asmi, I have been defeated. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. O Emperor, now I am separated from my friend and dearmost well-wisher, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore my heart appears to be void of everything. In his absence, I have been defeated by a number of infidel cowherd men, while I was guarding the bodies of all the wives of Krishna. Responsibly, O Emperor, now I am separated from my friend and dearmost well-wisher, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore my heart appears to be void of everything. In his absence, I have been defeated by a number of infidel cowherd men, while I was guarding the bodies of all the wives of Krishna. It's a pretty big job when you consider there were 16,108 wives. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The important point in this verse is how it was possible that Arjuna could be defeated by a gang of ignoble cowherd men, and how such mundane cowherd men could touch the bodies of the wives of Lord Krishna, who were under the protection of Arjuna. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has justified the contradiction by research in the Vishnu Purana and the Brahma Purana. In these Puranas, it is said that once the fair denizens of heaven pleased Ashtavakra Muni by their service, and were blessed by the Muni to have the Supreme Lord as their husband. Ashtavakra Muni was curved in 8 joints of his body, and thus he used to move in a particular curved manner. The daughters of the demigods could not check their laughter upon seeing the movements of the Muni, and the Muni, being angry at them, cursed them that they would be kidnapped by rogues, even if they would get the Lord as their husband. Later on, the girls again satisfied the Muni by their prayers, and the Muni blessed them that they would regain their husband, even after being robbed by the rogues. So in order to keep the words of the great Muni, the Lord himself kidnapped his wives from the protection of Arjuna. Otherwise they would have at once vanished from the scene as soon as they were touched by the rogues. Besides that, some of the gopis who prayed to become wives of the Lord returned to their respective positions after their desire was fulfilled. After the departure of Lord Krishna, he wanted all his entourage back to Godhead, and they were called back under different conditions only. The verse again by Srila Prabhupada. O Emperor, O Emperor, now I am separated from my friend and dearmost well-wisher, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore my heart appears to be void of everything. In his absence, I have been defeated by a number of infidel cowherd men, while I was guarding the bodies of all the wives of Krishna. Mukam karoti bachalam pangam lagayate giram yat kripa tarham bande Shri Guru Dinatarane. It's interesting that Krishna, who was a very powerful warrior, was also very dependent upon Krishna. He mentions in the Bhagavad Gita that he couldn't even hold his bow, Gandiva. It was, in his words, slipping from my hand when he realized that he was not going to be protected by Krishna. So, and in the battle of Kurukshetra, actually it was Krishna who was the victor. Even though he didn't take credit, he wanted Arjuna to take credit for the fight. And that's his modus operandi. He always wants his devotees to get credit for what he himself is arranging. He arranges many things. So everything that we see, everything that's mentioned, Srimad Urjitameva, everything that's beautiful and powerful, is actually organized by Krishna. In insurance policies, it is said that floods and hurricanes and earthquakes and things like that are, quote, acts of God, end quote. But what it doesn't say in these insurance policies is that the air we breathe, the light that we see, the trees that we gaze upon, and all the wonderful things that exist are also acts of God. It's not just the horrible, unusual, devastating acts, but the good things that happen. They're all as a result of Krishna. So we all have to be kind of thankful to Krishna, even for allowing us to exist, even to breathe. He's behind everything. He says in the Bhagavad Gita that he's behind everything in material nature. Maya dakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam. Everything, even that appears to be enacted by the laws of nature, are ultimately controlled by the Lord himself. So this is a very interesting setup, that Arjuna lost his power to guard the wives of Krishna temporarily. This also was a special arrangement by Krishna. It's not that he was weak, and as Vishwanath Chakravarti did some research and found in the Vishnu Purana, there was a story behind all this kidnapping of the wives of Krishna by the rogues, and that they regained their husband, and it was all Krishna's arrangement. So the departure of the Pandavas, as it's mentioned, is in a timely fashion. Timely because it's arranged by Krishna. It's not that they're not ordinary people. They were either demigods or incarnations of Krishna. So somehow or other, Krishna had to, after 125 years of being on this planet, and he never seemed to age past the age of 25, according to Prabhupada. There were a lot of occurrences that happened in that 125-year period, and one that is that he married 16,108 wives. So this wasn't a small dynasty. The dynasty, he mentions, it's in one of his, I think it's even in one of the verses, that each family had 10 sons, and each of them had 10 more sons. So we're talking about almost 1.5 million people, which is pretty much the size of a small city. I mean, it's not a small thing. So it's mentioned in this chapter, and Prabhupada also talks about it a little bit in the purport. He says, after the departure of Lord Krishna, he wanted all his entourage back to Godhead, and they were called back under different conditions. It's not a very pleasant thing to notice the departure of Krishna and the Pandavas and the Yadu dynasty. Rupa Goswami has called these things magical performances. It's not that we talk about them every day, or we think about them, or read about them, or we hear about them constantly, but it's kind of a depressing situation in a way. It's very jubilant in the sense that Krishna exists everywhere. It's not that he's just visibly present on this earth for 125 years and then he's not in existence anymore. But he exists everywhere at all times and all places, even though we don't physically have interactions with him. Arjuna was recalling the passages, the pastimes that he had with Krishna before he saw him as his guru and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that he was informally talking with him, he was joking, and then at a certain point we read in the Bhagavad Gita that he says, okay, now I want to end this friendly banter that we're having, this friendly kind of relationship, and I see you as my spiritual master. And so it ends the kind of inconclusive talk between friends. And it's said in the Vedas that there's no argument. No argument with the Guru, no argument with the Vedas. Prabhupada even told us once that there's I think it's a Bengali saying, it may be a Hindi saying, that what are you saying? Are you saying something that is so foolproof that it's Vedic literature, that it can't be argued against, that it's absolutely true in all times and all places? The Vedas are always true, and Prabhupada gave us the 3-point sort of validation system of Guru, Shastra, and Sadhu, that if we see some apparent contradictions in the Shastras, we can go to Sadhus and we can go to Gurus. And there's a verse that Prabhupada quotes. The verse is in the Mahabharata. The verse ends with Mahajyena Gatasvapanta, that all the secrets, the information that we really need to know that's in the Vedas is in the hearts of the Mahajans. So Guru, Shastra, and there's the Sadhus. And then there's the Guru who can always ask questions to. The whole of the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavatam and all of the Vedic literature, in fact, is based on questions and answers. Questions and answers. Like in the Bhagavad Gita, there's a conversation going on between Arjuna and Krishna. It's not just rote, you have to do, this is the doctrinaire truth, this is always true. It's a dialogue. It's between two people. So someone is always saying something. So if we want to know the essence of truth, we can go to the Shastra, we can go to the Sadhus, the Mahajans, and we can go to the Guru. We can, personally, we have living Gurus, so we can ask them questions. And as I was saying earlier, the disciples of Prabhupada, like me, who are acting as spiritual masters, are not the be-all and end-all, as used to be thought. And I think I said somewhere earlier that the age of the Guru Supermen or and Gurupis is no longer existing. In the academic world, we have assistant professor, associate professor, and full professor. But even the assistant professors, they have to profess something. They have to teach. They have to be professors. In a class, like not in a university, just in an ordinary class, there's certain people that are designated as teachers' assistants. They can act on behalf of the teacher. They can give some instructions to some of the students, whether the overall teacher may be busy or something. So we are kind of like that. We see that Prabhupada is the ultimate authority, and we consider him a Paramhansa, an infallible guru. And according to time, place, and circumstance, he preached. He didn't say everything to everyone. I think it's in Matthew, there's somewhere in the Bible where Christ says, I have many more things to say, but I'm not saying them. Because he was also a very important avatar of Krishna, or a son of Krishna. He also didn't say everything. So according to time, place, and circumstances, things are said. So I'm a little bit careful about what I have to say, because I'm not just speaking to the people that are sitting here in this room, I'm speaking to the whole world. This is going out it's being recorded. And these recordings can end up in Durban and London or Paris or wherever. So please forgive me if I'm not going into some very intimate, confidential pastimes, because I have to be a little bit careful, a little bit politically correct about what is being said. Unfortunately, we live in an age when everything is being recorded. Not everything, but most things are being recorded, especially classes like this are being recorded. So Krishna was the real victor of the Battle of Kurukshetra, even though Arjuna was given credit. And he acted in a very humble way. He acted as the chariot driver of Krishna. Prabhupada told us the story of an illiterate South Indian Brahmin. I think it was somewhere near Tamil Nadu or somewhere, but he was illiterate. And Lord Chaitanya approached him, and he saw that he was reading the Bhagavad Gita, but reading it in a way that was impossible. Maybe it was upside down or something to really understand. And he said, "What are you doing?" Lord Chaitanya asked him, "What are you doing?" He said, "Oh, I'm reading Bhagavad Gita." but I'm illiterate. I can't read the words. I don't know what they say. And he said, but you're holding the book and you're turning the pages one after the other. You appear to be reading. How is that? And he said that this illiterate person said that, well, my guru told me that I have to read this book. I have to read at least so many pages or so many chapters every day. And then Lord Chaitanya further said to him, he said, well, I see that there are tears in your eyes. You don't seem to be reading. You seem to be having some kind of emotional reaction when you're turning the pages of this book. Why is that? And he said, well, my guru once told me that Krishna acted as the chariot driver of Arjuna. He acted in a subservient, menial servant way. And when I see that the Supreme Lord was so menial and so servile, so much of a servant to his devotee, I become choked up, and it brings tears to my eyes, and I cry. Lord Chaitanya then embraced him and said, "You are the true reader of Bhagavad Gita." Use that. I don't know if that's the way he said it, but he said it's not literacy that matters. It's the essence of what he was saying. It's not literacy that matters. It's the nature of your feeling or vibration that matters. So it's mentioned in this purport that Krishna called his entourage back to Godhead, and they were called back under different conditions. This way that the Yadu dynasty, they were not ordinary people. They were either demigods or incarnations, and there was a huge number of them. They left in a way that Rupa Goswami calls a magical appearance, or that they left in a magical way. It's not the sort of thing that we think about or read about or talk about a lot. There's an interesting incident behind their departure. We understand that they engaged in sort of a fratricidal warfare with iron rods, and they had gotten partially intoxicated by taking putrefied rice, which was kind of like a rice wine. So the story behind the background behind all this is, and it's mentioned here in a purport in the 3rd canto, and also in the 11th canto. There's some actual verses describing how this happened. And the way it happened was that once upon a time, some devotees, some members of the Yadu dynasty, when they were young, one of them, named Samba, was dressed as a pregnant woman. He had a very large, round, I guess about 1.5 feet in diameter, rock under his sari, so that he looked like a pregnant woman. And in a kind of a playful mood, these Yadu people asked the sages. This took place in a holy place. It was somewhere near Delhi, and they approached a number of sages headed by Vishwamrita and Narada Muni, and they asked him, "Can you please tell us?" In a kind of sarcastic way, they were saying, "Can you please tell us, oh dear sages, what is going to be the future of this child? Is it going to be a boy or a girl? And is it going to be a devotee? Is it going to be a Vaishnava?" and so on. And can you please tell us what this fair-haired woman's offspring is going to be like? And it was actually not a woman. But these sages were very intelligent. They kind of figured out that these boys were joking and playing a trick on them. And they knew that this wasn't actually a woman, a pregnant woman. And they said that growth in your stomach is going to be the death of your whole dynasty. They cursed these boys in that way. And so then the boys became very fearful of this curse, and they went to the then king of their area, who was Ugrasena, asked him what to do. And he said, "You immediately take this rock or this club out of your stomach, and I will pulverize it." So he did that. They took the big rock out of his stomach, from under his sari, and it was pulverized and cast into the ocean. Then, by Krishna's arrangement, by higher arrangement, the particles of dust that had been the pulverized rock were carried back to the shore in the form of waves, and by Krishna's arrangement, they grew into kind of like cattails or rushes, and they were made of iron. They were iron rods. And what happened was when the Yadus, in their semi-inebriated state, decided to fight one another with what they thought were very fragile and harmless reeds. They picked these rods out of the shore, and they ended up having a very volatile and brutal war, and they ended their lives, and they all went back to Godhead. This is all by Krishna's arrangement. This happened in a place called Prabhas. And this is all by Krishna's arrangement. It was not a small thing. I mean, when we consider how many there were a lot of people. And but anyway, this is the story, not the story, but the incident that caused this to happen. And it was all Krishna's arrangement. This disguise of Samba as a woman and the curse by the sages. It was all Krishna's arrangement. And if you want to read about this, it's in the 11th canto, and there's a little bit about it in the purport to the third canto. But that's what happened. So Krishna has very special power to cause things to happen. And when something unfavorable happens, we tend to say, well, it's Krishna's arrangement. I'm having, or it's for my own purification that I have cancer, or that I have Parkinson's disease, or that I'm getting ill every day. It's Krishna's arrangement to purify me. It's a kind of a purification. Whether someone is an enemy or a friend of Krishna, whatever he does is all good. Even the demonic people that he killed were liberated. They were given salvation. There was Shishupala, who was first liberated into the impersonal effulgence of Krishna, and then later on received the direct association of Krishna. And Kamsa, who in the hateful rasa was thinking about Krishna all the time, and Krishna liberated him by killing him. And when he did away with Putana, he gave her a position in the spiritual sky as his mother, because she acted in a way to him that was motherly. So Krishna is always kind. Whatever he does is for the benefit of both enemies and friends. And I think it was Bhaktisiddhanta who wished the best for his enemies. A person who is very advanced in Krishna consciousness thinks that there is no such thing as an enemy, or no such thing as a friend, but all are equal, and all can be benefited. I think it was Bhaktisiddhanta who's known for saying that he wishes all the best for his enemies, that his enemies are his best friends. Devotees always try to see who their enemies are. This is, Prabhupada talked about this as a form of intelligence. When he was lecturing at Bhaktivedanta Manor in 1973, he was lecturing on the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and that's a very hard chapter to lecture on, because most people just see it as a list of Sanskrit names of different warriors and fighters and what they were good at doing. But there was a sort of another agenda going on. And Prabhupada, when he lectured, he talked about how important it is to assess the strength of the enemies, especially when it comes to warfare. And he was talking about how the Kuru dynasty was assessing the power of the Pandavas. All these armies had come to join them. And he goes on to say that you really, to be intelligent, you have to really assess the power of your enemies. In the corporate world, there's what they call industrial espionage, where spies are sent to see what the so-called competitors are doing, what their strategies are, to learn how to be to get to maintain their current market share. So this is the way Prabhupada was lecturing. I mean, he was able to screw something very meaningful out of a very difficult chapter in the Bhagavad Gita, the first chapter. So this is part of intelligence, and it's part of Krishna's arrangement. This war took place. That's another topic that I won't have time to go into. But I think we're running out of time, so I think you might have some comments or questions. Maybe you're going to be speaking to people in faraway places, so just beware.
It seemed like Srila Prabhupada identified the enemies as the impersonalists and the scientists, very effectively. It's noted that he sort of, understood the teachings, but the relevance of it in being blocked by certain elements in society, and was able to effectively counteract in his purports and in his talking.
Yeah, it's a very good question. Actually, sometimes Prabhupada would feel it was necessary to take arms against the enemy and to defeat them, and other times he would simply tolerate various forms of abuse. In most cases, he advised devotees to be ahimsa, or non-violent, to turn the other cheek, as it said in the Bible. But in certain cases, when violence was required, like Hanuman destroyed the whole city of Lanka, setting it afire. That was acting in a violent manner, because he was acting for Ram. He was acting for. It's a very rare thing that it happened, but it does happen. Violence can be used in Krishna's service. Ghastliness, just like Kamsa was thinking of Krishna, that he wanted to kill him, but that was a kind of a rasa, and Krishna admired that. And Putana had the rasa of Krishna's mother, kind of pervertedly, but she wanted to also kill him, but Krishna awarded her some opulence. And then when Sisupala and others were violent, Krishna actually cut their heads off, and he did away with them. But for the most part, and he killed a lot of demons, but for the most part, he and the sages are non-violent. I think it's mentioned that Krodha, Kama Krodha, in the Bhagavad Gita, that it's wrong to succumb to anger and violence. So it's a kind of a moot question. It can be debated for eternity whether one should use force or violence, and whether one should always be tolerant or not. Generally, the tolerance is recommended, and ahimsa is recommended. But on occasion, Prabhupada had to be violent. I recently sent a letter to a few devotees when the British government banned the Ratha Yatra in Trafalgar Square, because the devotees did some things that they shouldn't have done to the square. Prabhupada became very angry, and he was so angry that he even deprecated some devotees in his speech. And his speech was recorded, and the recording was sent to London, and a few devotees had to convince the government through violence and non-violence, mostly violence or threat of violence, to unban and to allow the Ratha Yatra festival to go on by Prabhupada's direction. So sometimes there was a need, and he called that government a police government, like a police state. I mean, it was a very heavy thing that he said. So there are occasions when violence is used, but for the most, and like with, as you said, certain people like Mayavadis and impersonalists are regarded as the enemy. In a sense, they're not the enemy, because thinking that Krishna is Brahman or impersonal is a step in the right direction. And it's even mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita that one can have this baby step, as it were, towards Krishna. But Prabhupada in several lectures has said that they're atheists, and Bhaktisiddhanta has also taken this step to say that people who disregard the personality of Krishna, they're atheistic. So it can be argued both ways, but for the most part we are taught to be non-violent and ahimsa. Just on special, rare occasions we can use violence. That's my understanding. You want to say something else?
I was referring a little bit to not so much as physical violence, but Prabhupada's ascertaining the scientists and the Mayavadis as the enemies of Krishna in a disguised form, or not so disguised, and making a very strong attack against these kinds of philosophical ideas.
Hatred or anger often leads to violence. So it's not that they're two separate things. They are, but in a way, in another way they're not. In a way we could say that the whole of the Bhagavad Gita was for Krishna to make Arjuna angry so that he would become violent and fight. So, like warfare, there's legal warfare. We can take someone to court, we can say they're wrong, they're a rogue, and there's a criminal decision has to be made by judges. That's a type of violence. There's also a type of violence that's very kind, that a leader or a parent or a mentor, you might say, sometimes has to use violence. Like with a child, sometimes has to be reprimanded for doing wrong things, and the parent sometimes uses physical violence to spank the child, not heavily, not out of anger, but out of it's a violent act to hurt a child. Prabhupada tells a story of a boy whose parents had died when he was young. Because he was young, he was raised by his mother's sister, his auntie. And then somehow or other, he became a criminal. And he murdered somebody. He went to a criminal court and was convicted of murder. And in the dock, or in the place where he was watching the courtroom proceedings, he sat next to his auntie, the one who had raised him. And according to Prabhupada, when the verdict was read out that he was guilty of murder, he bit his auntie's ear violently. And he said, "It's all your fault. You never reprimanded me, you never told me not to do anything, you never hurt me, you never said I was wrong, and I turned out to be a rascal, and it's all your fault." So that's an example of not using violence when it should be used. And I think Prabhupada once said that a leader or a teacher or a parent has to reprimand and correct in different ways the charge, the student, the son, or the disciple, in order to be sure. And I think it was Chanakya Pandit who said that one should always never be overly kind and mollycuddly towards a dependent, but always correct that dependent and make sure that he or she is on the right track to do that. So that's there also. Not that correction, not that there shouldn't be positive encouragement, but that sometimes it has to be the other way. Yes?
Hare Maharaj. I was just wanting to talk about the post-incident in Trafalgar Square, what you were talking about when the devotees were being harassed by the council. You probably know better than I do, but Guru Das was telling me something about it, is that because the devotees were stopped from chanting also in Trafalgar Square, so they'd go chanting in their robes, and the council would, inspectors would immediately apprehend them. And then they'd make a run for it because Prabhupada said to resist, right, and spread the chanting. So that went on for a while. So then, one point in time, all the devotees, they dressed up in suits, right, and they went chanting in suits. And then the council was bewildered because they looked like everybody else in Trafalgar Square. So they didn't know what to do. So it just showed the parody of the situation there. So in the end, I think we won out. Is that sort of something?
It's pretty close. I mean, I was there in part of it, and memories fade, so thanks for the memories. So I think I'll end here. In Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Jai Shri Krishna Sankirtan ki jai.